Hi friends, I'm Felicia. Welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while since I've done a wrap up. Oops, my quarter 2 wrap up. And now it's time for a quarter 3 wrap up. So whatever. It just happened that August was like the busiest month of my life, and then September was similarly busy. I don't know why, just what happened. So filming videos kind of went out of the way, like out the door, as they say. What I call out the door. I just preferred to spend my time reading than filming videos, I guess, when I had the time. So here we go. So I think I'm gonna split up my wrap up a little bit. Today's video is gonna be just talking about the nonfiction that I read in July and August, because I didn't finish any nonfiction in September. Oops. But I've actually been reading a lot of nonfiction this year, which is great, because that was one of my goals, was to read more. And I've read, like, besides, I think it probably would average out to at least 2 a month this year, so I'm okay if I miss a month without finishing one. And it's also funny, because everything that I finished before the reading rush in the end of July was nonfiction. So, like, whatever. But yeah, so the first one that I finished in July was Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And I read half of it, and then I had to bring it back to the library. So then I listened to the rest on audio. And this is basically a book. He's talking about what is essentialism. It's kind of like, I guess, minimalism of the schedule, in a sense. It's just basically figuring out what is actually essential for you to do in your life, because we get so caught up with doing all these things and saying yes to everything. Is like, does this actually need to be done? Does this need to be done by me? Can someone else do it, or should we just not do this at all? Can we do it better? And so I read that at a really good time. I was doing a volunteer task at church, and I was actually having a really hard time with it, because I didn't see it as being actually necessary anymore. And so I was struggling with that. I was like, why am I doing this? I don't think this actually... I'm taking half an hour out of my week to do something that probably doesn't actually impact anyone. So in reading the book, I had already like kind of been wanting to step down, but then after I read the book, I was like, I actually didn't feel guilty about it anymore, that I didn't want to do this anymore. And so I told my leader that I wasn't going to do it anymore. And so I think since August, I haven't done it, and it's been like great. And I just realized the other day, I was like, oh wait, I don't have to do that anymore. It's good. So I don't know what they figured out, but it's not on my yard anymore, so it's good. Yeah, I'd recommend it if you're looking for just like kind of that motivation too, or if you struggle with practicing actually doing things that are worth your time, and not just like saying yes to everything, because I tend to do that too. I'm getting better, and this book definitely was just like, I don't think it was like anything new, but it was more like just like encouragement in that area. So I really liked it. I would like to probably read it again in the future. The next nonfiction that I finished was Jane's Fame by Claire Harmon, and I actually listened to this on audio, and I didn't love it on audio, but that's fine. Not that it was bad, I just didn't, whatever, I didn't enjoy it that much. So this is basically the history of Jane Austen throughout the years. So she talks about Jane Austen's writing process, and kind of like what it was, the chronology of her works getting published and written, and kind of what was going on at that time. And then just basically goes through from like when Jane wrote her books to like now, and kind of how people have felt about them, and how they've impacted people, and how her fame has been really lasting. Like her books have never gone out of print. Like that's amazing. But while I liked the subject matter and I liked learning about kind of the history, the writing was just, it was just standard. Like it wasn't very engaging, I guess. It was interesting without being engaging, if that makes sense, but it was. And then I thought it would be like, it's how Jane Austen conquered the world, but I was kind of expecting that she would talk about the impact that Jane Austen's writing has had in like non-English countries. Like, how do people in China feel about Jane Austen? How do people in South Africa feel about Jane Austen? Like, you know, the world. Like, I thought it would be like non-English countries. But yeah, it was still interesting. So if you're interested in that stuff, like, pick it up and read it. It's probably on Book Outlet. That's where I got it. The audiobook is also on Scribd, if you're interested. Okay, the next book that I finished was 1000 Gifts by Anne Voskamp. And I bought this book, like, when I started my channel, also with Jane's fame, because my mother-in-law had read it at the time and she absolutely loved it, so I finally got around to reading it. And this book is, it's confusing for me, because on the one hand I loved it, on the other hand I hated the writing. So, basically, there was a period in Anne Voskamp's life where she was, I guess she was just feeling down and kind of discouraged, and one of her friends challenged her to think of 1000 gifts in her life, like blessings that she can reflect on. So she started keeping a journal, and it was just literally 1, I'm thankful for this, 2, thankful for this. And she eventually she did end up with over 1000 gifts on her list, and I thought that was so beautiful. And she talked about how her mindset changed when she was spending so much time practicing thankfulness, and how her relationship with God changed, her view of God, and just just how beginning to actually live a life. Are you okay? Something just happened in Minecraft. I don't know what, but anyways, that was scary. What was I saying? Anyways, so yeah, like, I absolutely loved that part of the book, but I really struggled with her writing. It's very poetic and like overly so. It's just like choices that she makes in her writing. Like, instead of saying things like, my husband came and whatever, gave me a hug, it'll be, the husband came. Or, I looked at the sky, all clouds and mystery, and like just so much of that, and so many sentence fragments. Like, it was just ridiculous, and I was like, I can't. And it took me a long time to get through this because I just couldn't anymore with the writing. I had to take breaks because it was just so overwhelmingly trying to be poetic. But then there were turns of phrase that I was like, oh, that's gorgeous. So I struggled with it, but I also liked it. And overall, it was a really good book. Like, I'm glad that I read it. I might read it again in the future, just because I just like that idea of living in thankfulness. And I actually started my own 1000 gift journal. I have not really... She was much more serious about actually like looking for things and making a point of doing it, and I have not. Just when I think about it. But I need to actually start making a point of doing that. But yeah, so those are my confusing feelings about that book. The next nonfiction book that I finished was Hes Been Faithful by Carol Cymbala, and she is the wife of the pastor of the Brooklyn Tabernacle Church, as well as she's the choir director And so I'm also starting to direct choir in my church's choir. It's terrifying, but also I love it. But it's terrifying. But yeah, our main choir director and worship pastor, they kind of challenged some of us leaders in the choir to read this book, and then we kind of like talked about it. And so basically she's just telling her story of how she came to be the choir director, and the things that have happened in the choir since she's been like leading it. And like they have won Grammys and everything, and she talks about how like she's very introverted and shy, and she has to do things like that. And I was like, girl, I feel you. And just so many stories of God's faithfulness to her in these areas where she felt weak. Because I definitely would feel weak there too also. Like if we're performing at the Grand Ole Opry, like, yeah, wouldn't want to do it. So yeah, it was really good. And she shared stories of people in her choir as well, and kind of where they were in their lives before Jesus found them and brought them to Brooklyn Tabernacle into the church and the choir. And it was just like, it just was such an enriching book to read for my heart. So I absolutely loved it. Moving on to the next book. The next book that I finished was The Year of Less by Kate Flanders, and basically it's a memoir of a year challenge, which I'm a sucker for. If you do a year-long challenge, I will probably read your book at some point. And she basically stopped shopping for a year, so she only allowed herself like essentials, like, you know, like food and groceries, reusables, and then she also had a list of like specific things that she wanted to buy in that year before it started. So like then she just stopped shopping otherwise, and she also like decluttered and got rid of things and kind of went to a minimalist lifestyle. And like, I love books about minimalism and whatever. She kind of talked more though about her personal life and like kind of the things that she was going through at the time. Like her parents got divorced in that year, and how that affected her, and just like all of these things. And like she changed career, and she talked more about those things and how it affected her mental state. And I guess I was expecting more of a book about like actually just like decluttering and stuff like that, and it wasn't so much about that. She kind of only really addressed that at the end. Like she did talk about her process throughout the book, but then I guess the subline is like how I did this. And so it's like, oh, you're gonna give me practical tips. Not so much. But I did like it, so I wasn't sad that I read it. So, but I am a sucker for minimalism books, so you know. The last nonfiction that I finished in August was Spark of Joy by Marie Kondo. Speaking of minimalism books and decluttering, I've been trying to do the KonMari method on my house, and I have stalled in my tracks. I'm on step 4, which is kimono, which is everything in your house basically. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, I just kind of read it for motivation. She has like different stories. She has more clarification, kind of exceptions to the rules that she sets out in her first book. Yeah, it like doesn't add really anything, but also it was like good motivation for me, although I haven't. I'm planning to start up again with the decluttering, because I just need stuff out of my house. Like there's just too much stuff, so it's great. But yeah, so it was like a book that I read. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad, you know, it was just there. So those are the nonfiction books that I read in July and August. Oh, there's a squirrel on my neighbor's roof. Okay. Squirrels. Squirrel! Oh my gosh. If you've read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts on them. And yeah, I'd just love to chat with you in the comments. And that's all that I have for today's video. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And until next time, so long, and thanks for all the fish.